Now, as South Africa gears up for the election in May, let's continue to look at various by-election results to see how much of a marker these could be for the national and provincial elections. Now, KwaZulu-Natal is one of the battlegrounds, and the ANC holding its manifesto launch at the weekend in that province. The EFF also holding its manifesto launch earlier this month at the Moses Mabhida Stadium, while the IFP will have its turn next month. And there's also, of course, a number of political parties on the ground as well. But let's discuss this now and speak to Senior Research Associate at the Auwal Socio-economic Research Institute and postdoctoral fellow at the Durban University of Technology, Dr. Imraan Buccus. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Buccus. The ANC launching its election manifesto to the voters at the weekend and looking at where the party finds itself in the province in particular. What are the main challenges that you would say are facing it as it approaches the election?
Well, Bongo, I think the ANC faces many challenges, not just in the province, but nationally too. I think this year marks a really significant election. And, you know, when a liberation movement in power reaches that 30-year mark, it certainly is significant. I think that's the mark at which we start to see implosion, we start to see corruption becoming overwhelming, infighting, etc. And that's not true just for the ANC or South Africa. That's true for much of the global South. I mean, if we think about Africa, that's happened from Kenya to Zambia to multiple other countries. So I think that romance of the liberation is wearing out. People are disillusioned. And the ANC in the recent past has been trying to kind of regain its moral integrity. But for the large part, I think people are disillusioned. And that's true for KZN too. You know, there are multiple factors besides what we talk about all the time, corruption and maladministration. There's also the emergence of new political parties on the scene, like Umkhonto we Sizwe, like developments we're seeing with the IFP and the Democratic Alliance. So I think there are multiple factors that are going to impact the ANC, particularly in a province like KZN.
So let's just try to zoom into some of them with the amount of time we have, and we start with the almost like seeming arrangement between the Democratic Alliance and the IFP, which is hoping to make some serious inroads and regain lost ground in the province. How do you see this one playing out in terms of the strategies that they're trying to employ in order to win the voters?
Well, quite bluntly, I think the DA and the IFP are a recipe for disaster. But I do think that people will turn to the DA and IFP because of their disillusionment with the ANC. I think both of these parties are gaining ground in KZN. You know that the IFP has KZN as a stronghold. And it's gaining, I think, in significant ways from the implosion and the kind of pushing to the periphery of parties like the NFP. So from 94 to about the last election, we saw a dramatic decline in support for the IFP. But then in the last election, we saw an incline. And if we had to go by what we're seeing in some of the by-elections, I think it's a party that's gaining more and more support. Although, coalitions by their very nature are unstable. And I worry about a DA-IFP coalition for a number of reasons. One is that they are poles apart ideologically. Two is the idea that there will not be corruption in a DA-IFP coalition, I think is far from true. We are likely to also see corruption in that kind of alliance. Three is I worry about, what kind of coherence that alliance will have in KZN. For example, we have a number of protests across the country and indeed in KZN. But when you have trade unions having massive protests, there is an uncanny ability by the ANC to manage that, to kind of take charge of that. If you have a SAMWU protest in KZN or another major trade union rising up in KZN, I highly doubt that a coalition like the IFP-DA will have what it takes to manage such a kind of upsurge in trade union activity, for example.
And how then does the new kid on the block, as described by others, the MK party, then spin the dynamic in this province? You think about the fact that they even took one of their rallies to KwaXimba, which is traditionally one of those areas that the ANC would enjoy much support. So how does this MK party then change this dynamic?
Well, I think there are several factors, Bongewe. One is, yes, it is a significant threat. Some of the polls are saying that the Bontu Sizwe will eat about 20% of the ANC vote, and that's not, completely surprising. But you need to bear in mind that the MK is entering, untested territory. It's never been tested where it matters the most, and in this case, at the polls. So we are yet to see how it will perform at the ballot box. And I think much of the support that former President Zuma and MK enjoys or has enjoyed historically has come from a context of patronage. One would need to think carefully about, the extent to which he's able to dispense that kind of patronage in the current context. So what does he have as his trump card? I think one is, Zuma's a chess player and he's watching it, literally and figuratively. He's watching the politics of KZN really closely. And I think he's also taking advantage of the factional battles in KZN. They are losers in the past, losers politically, as in those who may have not have gained, sorts of power that they would have wanted, would coalesce around Zuma. And, I think there are a number of names that have lost the kind of power that they've had previously. So I think Zuma's really taking into account all of this. And what has surprised many is that it seems to be a well-organized party in KZN, despite the fact that, it's barely a few weeks old. It seems like well-oiled machinery in terms of its brand equity, the extent to which it's playing its role in a number of communities. So I do think the MK is a significant threat. But again, I'd like to reiterate what I said at the start, that, it's uncontested territory. It's never been tested at the ballot box. So we are yet to see how the MK will perform.
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, another party that's hoping for an outright majority in that province is the EFF, as they said that they're looking to win this particular election. But given how it's been performing, in that province over time, is this a possibility at all?
Well, I don't think KZN is a stronghold for the IFP. Yes, certainly it's made a massive improvement in the last election, 2019. We live in a country of young people where 50% are under 30, and that is in large part, the kind of electorate that the EFF is going after. But I think one of the huge challenges it faces in that age category is that people might turn up to the manifesto launch and to the rallies, but young people, particularly in the 18 to 25-year-old category, are not turning up at the polls. And we have enough empirical data to show us that. And again, that's not a KZN or a South African phenomenon. That's an international phenomenon where younger people tend to turn up at the polls less than they do to rallies and to other events. So I think that plays against the EFF. Its populist message, its fiery message, I think resonates with a number of young people. But the challenge again is, to what extent will it improve from that 10% mark nationally and in KZN? And I doubt that it's going to reach the 17, 18% that some polls are predicting, in large part because I think, young people have a tendency not to turn up on the day of elections.
And especially because we have even seen the IEC, in fact, in some of these, instances, really trying to go even into institutions of higher learning to get a sense of what are some of the issues that can also help to improve that. But let's see then what happens, Dr. Buccus, because we'll also be speaking to the IEC later on in the show, and to see how best they navigate what you've just raised as well. That was a senior research associate at the Auwal Socio-economic Research Institute and a postdoctoral fellow at Durban University of Technology, Dr. Imraan Buccus. Thank you so much for your time.